Parenting is never easy, but add in your child having a chronic illness or special need, and the challenge is multiplied. The oxygen mask effect is here to help parents learn to put their oxygen masks on first so that they can become healthier, which will allow them to become stronger caregivers and more effective advocates for their children. Hello and welcome to today's episode of The Oxygen Mask Effect. I am excited to be joined by my friend, Tanja Diamond. She is a master life strategist of 37 plus years, Tantra lineage holder, biohacker, expert in radical courage and restructured ancient practices. She's been called a maverick leader for her work in assisting others to transform trauma and unwanted behaviors holding them back from an extraordinary living. She is a 5-time #1 international best-selling author and the innovator of 3 highly effective personal development brands: Modern Tantra, which is the 7 Tantras to integrated intelligence; High Speed Evolution, the 5 evolutions to life mastery; and Recover Your Life in 20 minutes a day. She is also somebody who certifies personal development coaches. Today, we are actually discussing a topic that for me is personal, but especially it is for Tanja as well, because I'm focusing a little bit, yes, still on self-care, but about being a parent of a child with chronic illness or lifelong conditions, or having them herself. And Tanja actually not only is a parent, but also has had her own chronic illnesses, which we will discover in the interview, she has actually cured herself of. So many different factors in this. Tanja, thank you for joining me on this episode.
I'm really excited to be here. Thanks so much. And I always want to, I think, blush after my intro, like blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh my gosh.
But you've done all those things. So it's
yes, indeed.
Important to mention because it has shaped who you are today with everything you've accomplished, plus everything you've experienced health-wise, physical, emotional, and parenting your daughter through all of this.
Right. Yes.
So tell me a little bit about what the conditions are, what your daughter's issues were, when they were diagnosed, how as a parent you did it, and also grow your business at the same time.
Right. Yeah. Well, the saga starts now. When I was 10, I came down with psoriasis, and we were living in Africa at the time, so people were alarmed it was leprosy. So there was a lot of crazy stuff around that whole thing. And when I say psoriasis, back then, my arms were literally, they looked like infected burns. Mm-hmm. I mean, pretty well, most of my body was covered. They were huge, red, pussy underneath, just really bad. So people consider that a lifelong condition or illness, right? Yeah. And as you'll find out that we'll say that, and we'll know that along the way I'll say, no, but that's not true. So yeah, so that was the start of everything as far as that goes. That was something I was used to, obviously had its problems as a child and getting teased and people paying money to go touch me and all sorts of weird stuff. So, okay. I started my first business when I was 16 and pretty much have been a serial entrepreneur ever since. And I've done a lot of different types of brick and mortar businesses up until about 1992. When I got involved online and everybody thought I was insane. You can't make money out of thin air, Tanja. What are you doing? One of the first women to make...
Internet barely existed then.
Right. I was one of the first women to make money online who was not in the sex industry. Since the internet was born on the back of porn, I was one of those women out there saying, no, I'm doing this other thing. So I've been diagnosed with all sorts of things, Hashimoto's, 25 years, medicated and all the rest of that. It's cured and gone. I haven't been on meds for 5 years. Fibromyalgia, way back when in the late 80s, before anybody really knew what it was. And I've been cured for 15 or 20, I think 22 years from that. And then I'm like, what else? So I know there's stuff. Actually, I'm curing diabetes right now. So I'm already off all meds and my blood sugar's better without meds than it was. And I'm going for the total cure right now. I'm actually doing raw food diet right now. And so through all that, I've been also growing businesses. I've been on my own mostly. I'm the sole supporter of my family most of the time. I had my child at 42.
Oh, wow.
I'm also neurodivergent on the spectrum. And I had my daughter at 42, and she's also on the spectrum. We're both what people consider high functioning, whatever that means. But I definitely had, I didn't want to be held as a baby. I had some really sensory big things, and so did she. Getting dressed was like crazy town. She'd scream itchy and start to pull it off, and it would get stuck in her head, and she would whirl around like a screaming dervish for 45 minutes. So there was a lot of, that type of thing going on. So different ways in which there are challenges both in, trying to keep myself healthy, trying to keep her healthy, trying to keep us all sane while, growing an empire essentially, which 4 years ago I lost when my partner who suffered a mental illness was my tech guru and turned off my servers, and 25 years of business was disappeared in I think it was 10 seconds.
Oh, wow. Because nothing was backed up anywhere that you could find it.
Oh, it was all backed up, but he was in charge of all of it.
Right.
Yeah. And he was not turning it over. So I just am now rebuilding. So that's.
Now, as a parent, to go on to the parenting end of things.
Yeah.
As a parent of a child with something such as the autism spectrum or any of the issues that went along with it, the sensory issues. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been there, done that. I know the challenges of a child with sensory issues. But yes, you might be as well, but how did that affect your business? How did that affect you personally with regard to taking care of yourself during those times?
Well, fortunately, because I was so old when I had her, I had already discovered the key to resetting my nervous system for health. And that actually made it possible for me to be social with other people. So I actually changed most of my neurodivergent traits, healed my nervous system, as well as a lot of those physical things along the way. So by the time my child showed up, or I had her, I had a pretty good arsenal of personal self-care. And I was able to start helping her brain, train her brain and her nervous system into being able to handle more things as well. Now, that only goes so far because I had that child that really, the last thing she wanted was to learn anything from me. So I couldn't directly teach her. I had to be an example of that, right? She was highly frustrated by things. She had an idea that how things were supposed to work. And if they didn't work that way, it was a meltdown.
Typical with the issues.
Right. And so for me, it was really about how do I live my life in a way, because she's super smart, that she sees what to do when certain things go on. Now, if I had been young when I had her and didn't have my stuff together or have the healing that I'd had or the reset that I had, I don't even know what would have happened. It would have been bad news. That's all I have to say, because at that point, I'd had the ability to not respond to her upsets. Mm-hmm. And that was really key, because as a parent, even no matter what, just as a parent, when your kids go off the rails, you tend to go with them. You get triggered by that, whether it's because you're frustrated, scared, upset, sad for them, whatever it is. And so that can get tough. So as far as the business went, when she came along, I did animal behavior work for 15 years in the very beginning of my work. And I tended to have the idea that my child was the same trainability as any smart animal. Now, some people go, what are you? I can't believe she just said that. Like, I didn't read childhood parenting books or anything before I had my child. I'd never actually held a baby until I had my child. I was anti-kid, not going to have them. And so I developed the number one trait that anybody parent needs to be able to do anything, which is consistency, a 99.9% consistency in how you deal with things. And so I think that really saved me a lot, because she had to learn at an early age that when I'm on the phone, unless you're bleeding, there's just no interruption, right?
Bodily fluids or blood.
Right. Yeah. Well, bodily fluids, whatever. I'm not worried about those. Just blood. Just let them with blood. So just really letting her know the expectations, that I had redirecting, but consistent, because I see a lot of parents, especially in business, I'm on a lot of business calls, right? It's like they're interrupted, and they keep focusing. And so the kid learns how to interrupt you with not thinking you're saying, don't interrupt me now. Don't interrupt me now. Well,
You're
so
allowing them to interrupt you.
Exactly. So it's hard. And yet, some people would say, well, that's not the best style of parenting. I mean, my kid's in college right now. She just published a book. She's 18 years old. She published her first poetry book this year.
Oh, awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah. In college, she is a remarkable human being. And she'll tell me it's because of how you raised me. Just the, consistency. No means no. Her friends would say, oh, come on, no, ask her again. And she's like, when my mom says no, you just don't want to know what it's like if you push anymore. Yeah. So that's the tough part, but I think that's also the important part, especially as women, because as you know, in the online or business world, primarily was built for men, the way men think, the way men deal with things. And also why a lot of men who had either were childless and single, right, or just dating, or they had their wife handling the child responsibility and all the care and all the rest of that. So they just sat in their office and said, calendar time is sacred time.
Or they had nannies or
they had a nanny, right.
The kids.
But very few at the time when I was getting online really had to handle the children and everything else and have that flexibility and have the ability to cope with all that.
Very true. And with everything, with your health issues and with dealing with your daughter, with building your business, what about self-care? How does self-care come into it? And I'm not just talking about the healing aspect of what you did, but how did you find time? How did you learn to create your self-care?
Well, here's the problem. People always say, how do you find time? There wasn't finding time. That's what I did.
Okay.
If you feel like you have to find time for self-care, it's already done.
Right.
So I am pretty disciplined in the ability to go, when I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, because waking up early is the key, both for how your body sets. There's no such thing as a night owl. I didn't sleep for 3 decades, by the way. 3 hours a night for 3 decades. That's how I messed myself up so bad. Now I'm like the sleep patrol. This is how you do it. All my clients are like, this is what we're going to do. So exactly. So getting up early is part of it. And, my breath work routine. A lot of people think of self-care as what I consider vanity care or preventative care. Mm-hmm. To me, the practices that I teach, they're called the practices, and those are part of the healing and the self-care. And they include breath work, certain motions, and different hand modalities on your body. So that's just a given. Like I would put that in front of, if my daughter was dying, of course not, right? But she could wait, whatever. I wouldn't schedule a client then. Everything can wait. The house can be dirty, nothing's as important, because I couldn't do that. Otherwise, I would not have made it.
That makes sense. With your clients, what are some of the tips that you give to your clients with creating their own self-care habits and routines?
Yeah, well, pretty much as soon as we start working together, it's like, okay, I'm going to assume that you don't take care of yourself. You come last. So now I'm going to teach you a 5-minute practice that I want you to do every single day, 7 days a week, no matter what. Nothing comes between that 5 minutes and that. Because what happens a lot of the time is that we've lost self-trust. When you say you're going to do something over and over again and you don't do it, you don't have self-trust anymore. So the first thing we've got to do when we're resetting a nervous system and a mindset issue is learn to trust ourselves. When I say I'm going to do this, I actually do it. So I start with micro practices to set you up for success. So a practice every single day without fail comes in the morning. Now that sounds so easy. 5 minutes. Anybody has 5 minutes. We can all do that. So many people come up with, well, I didn't do it today because I had to go to the airport. I didn't do it today because I woke up and I didn't just feel crap. I didn't do it today because blah, blah, blah. And it's like so ludicrous. So that's my main thing is like, I've done it in the hospital. I've done it after surgery. I've done it before surgery. It doesn't matter. When you learn to commit to yourself, then you can start building on that. So most people take up too much. Oh, I'm going to spend an hour doing this, 45 minutes doing that, whatever. And I like to restructure all these practices into these 5-minute chunks. So the most I would ever have somebody doing is 20 minutes. And they could actually disperse that in the evening, disperse it throughout the day.
Especially if it's something that they've never done before, chunking it down to something smaller makes it a lot easier to manage.
100%. And you know what? If somebody's really struggling, we'll go for a minute. You're doing this practice a minute every day because some people are so fractured in their ability to do something for themselves.
Yeah.
That literally just that minute of I'm going to do it every day, be like, oh, I forgot. What, really? Because it's one thing. How did you forget?
Right.
Worthiness. So our lack of self-trust, our lack of commitment to ourselves, our lack of self-worth. I really address all these things that are really micro level with the nervous system and neural pathways in the brain. And pretty soon, like I work with people that have addictions or past sexual trauma, lots of stuff. One of my clients today, I think we've only been working 3 times together. And she said, it's the weirdest thing. Today, I realized I don't want to take any pills during the day. She battles addiction. She goes, you told me when we started, just don't even worry about the addiction stuff right now. Just forget about that. We're doing something else. And she was like, how did this happen? Right.
Now, you've healed yourself from multiple illnesses, including cancer.
Yeah.
How did you do that?
Well, part of it is the fact that, my first thing was the whole fibromyalgia thing back when nobody knew anything. And they said, well, this is the protocol, best doctor in the US. This is the protocol everybody's being on. And I said, okay, well, when do they get better? And he goes, well, no, people don't get better from this. We're not sure what's going on with it, but it's considered an incurable, chronic disease. And I'm like, well, dude, then I'm not following the protocol you have everybody else on because I'm going for the cure. So I forayed off to figure out what I could do, what was it? And it came to the understanding that almost all disease is, when they say dis-ease in the body, they're literally talking about inflammatory problems. Mm-hmm. However, most inflammatory problems start from inner conflict. So like I've seen people eat beautiful diets and succumb to cancer. I've seen people, exercise, do all the right things and have a heart attack.
Right.
So I was kind of curious, like, what's that about? Oh, internal conflict. When we're living untrue to ourselves and we have an friction of that, our nervous system's out of balance, and our nervous system controls almost everything in our body, hormones, everything gets there. So there's like that master switch that is what I go to work on. So first of all, I don't believe in incurable. I mean, my neurodivergence was not considered high functioning. I was socially not really able to cope with people at all. Nobody knows that. Most people don't even know that I'm autistic. So, there was the first one. How do you change your nervous system to be able to cope with things that are in the world, processing information and things like that? So that's a nervous system reset. If your nervous system is reactive instead of responsive, everything that's like my neighbor right now has a fan on in their bathroom downstairs. Okay. That thing has the potential to make me insane, like literally just lose it totally. And I know that if I can hear that and it irks me at all, that I need to address some self-care. Like my nervous system is not in a resilient state. It's in a reactive state.
Okay.
So, like I said, 82,000 people I've got data from too, working for all these years. So there's a lot of data on how this goes, but healing anything is the first thing is to believe that it's possible to heal it.
Right.
So addressing that whole idea that with fibromyalgia, it seemed to me, I didn't really have a good no in place. My NO was not good. So
no is huge.
Right. I was behind everybody, or I'd have to have a reason to say no because that was mean or cruel or whatever. And as soon as I got good with my no, and with no, not even an excuse, hey, can you do this and whatever? No. And that became comfortable. I was able to start addressing my nervous system, then some physical scarring and stuff that I had from I used to do extreme sports, lots of accidents, lots of concussions. I got 37 surgical scars. So I've been through a lot of stuff, addressing that. And then from there, but the bottom line is that nervous system, if you've got that calibrated, even your mindset stuff works better. If you try to do mindset stuff before you have your nervous system calibrated, you're running upstream all the time.
Oh, very interesting. Now, we had spoken previously, And you told me that over the last couple of years, you were dealing, and especially during COVID, you were dealing with cancer and chemo.
Yeah.
Are you okay to talk about that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So basically, I'd had 2019, I got diagnosed with thick uterine lining. And that we tried a couple of things and, that wasn't working. I'd been through menopause 10 years earlier. So I'm 60. So they were like, okay, well, let's just take your uterus out. And I'm like, yeah, we just like jerk organs out of your body because there's a lot of other connections, energetic and emotional and physical that go into that. So I said, do I have time to like do some stuff first? So I was working on some things when it became clear to me that the resistance I was having about the hysterectomy was really more about my mom's whole freak out about it. And so when I realized that, I'm like, oh yeah, no, let's do it,
get it over with.
Let's go. And so that all went fine. But when they did it, I got COVID in February of 2020. So they didn't know what COVID really was. I had the first, but a bad like 3 months, which stalled my surgery that I was supposed to have because they shut everything down. Right. So finally got surgery 4 months after I was supposed to. And my doctors, when I was through it, he said, oh, hey, by the way, you have surprise cancer. I'm like, surprise cancer? What is surprise cancer? Yeah. But they found ovarian cancer in the pathology report. So because they didn't know I had it, they didn't go do the staging protocols that they do for it. So they couldn't accurately stage it. So it was either a 2B, which gave me a 75% survival rate to 5 years, or a 2C, which gave me a 35% survival rate for 5 years. My mother died of ovarian cancer. So I wasn't going to do chemo because I was going to work on my own healing, but I had no tumor. There was nothing in my body to be able to scan or see or me to measure that things were working. Right. So after a few weeks debate, which everybody was trying to push me like to hurry up, I'm like, yeah, I'm taking my time here, people.
I'm not jumping into anything.
Yeah, I decided to do chemo. And so Doxil, which is the most hardcore chemo on the planet, is pretty well what they decided to do. And so 6 months of Doxil last year. And I've been clean, my scans and my blood work keeps coming back clear. So, did it all just leave when they took it out the first time and the chemo was just a, prophylactic or what? But interestingly enough, I did a deep dive, of course, like I always do when there's something into it, and came up with protocols that people don't use, like dog dewormer. Panicure has been used for more stage 4 cancer, people that are dying. They're stage 4, they're terminal, they're going to die, there's no hope. But this guy named Joe Tippins came up with this protocol from a friend of his, and basically dewormer actually kills tumors at the part where they try to replicate. And this has been known for 45 years. So yes, so it's not that whole ivermectin and the virus is not so far. It's not so far-fetched when you understand that these dewormers, these anti-parasitics, actually are anti-tumor growing as well. But anyway, so I did that as well during this protocol, which was always exciting because, I do everything on Facebook Live, right? Here it is. Here's what I'm doing. I'm curing this. I'm healing that. Let's do that. And my doctors were always quite like, you're doing what? And I'm like, yeah, check it out. I'm doing it Facebook Live. Here's me and my dog dewormer. And so far, so good. That's all great. Yeah. And I feel, people talk about brain fog. And I mean, I got this is what's going to happen to you post chemo. You won't ever be the same. That's just what happens. You're trying to we kill you,
Right.
But I sailed through it. I treated it like a vacation. It was chemocation. I made T-shirts that said, I'm on chemocation. I'm hungover from chemocation. I complained because there were no men on the retreat that I was on. We're the men. So I really had very little. I didn't take any post meds, like post throw up meds. I didn't take any meds other than during the chemo to actually get it in my body because I had a huge emergent reaction. The 4 drops in, my body rebelled, and they had the whole ER team up there. So they had to really hit me up with huge amounts of steroids for my body to
accept the chemo.
except the chemo. But yeah, so that was that. That was over. To me, people will say something like every once in a while, like, how are you? And I'm like, why are you asking me like that? And then I'm like, oh, cancer. That's so 2020. So yeah, doing well.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. You have just been through so much and you're growing, you're rebuilding your business successfully.
Yep.
Between your daughter and you and just everything you've experienced, you really know the issues that go along with self-care and dealing with chronic conditions.
Well, without it, I wouldn't be here because I've been through like 3 major relationship things and breakups. I had my fiance die on me. I mean,
Oh no.
I had some, man, I couldn't even, like, you would just go, whoa, we'd spend 2 hours talking about all the stuff. And
Okay, we'll have to do that another time.
my constant has been that if I am to phrase your show, if I didn't put my own oxygen mask on first, I wouldn't be sitting here today. I certainly wouldn't be as successful in almost everything or survive the loss of the things that I've survived either. Because if your nervous system is resilient and something horrible happens, I mean, literally when they said I had cancer, I said, okay, what are we going to do? I wasn't in shock. I wasn't freaked out. A resilient nervous system is a beautiful thing.
Definitely. And you've gotten yourself to that amazing point. And, you know, if you had a tip or let's say 3 tips for parents of children with a chronic illness, chronic condition, lifelong condition, what would they be? The top 3 tips for taking care of themselves.
Okay, well, the top 3 tips are you literally have to make that time, whether that's for a run or a walk or that thing that gives you space, because you have to have space to be able to recharge. And you have to treat that like literally you're going to die if you don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like I said, that commitment
Yes.
to self, no matter what, even if it's just something that's 5 minutes. Put down the medications that you're using instead. The chocolate, the Facebook, the binge watching, the alcohol, the drugs, whatever those things are, the excuses, you got to put them down. You've got to really get real with yourself and put them down, because anybody can do this. I'm telling you that anybody can do this. And then number 3 is, if you don't have a good conscious breath work practice, you need one. That is imperative. Breath work changes your nervous system in about an instant. You cannot be relaxed and stressed at the same time. It's physiologically impossible. So if you learn how to breathe correctly, then you can really start to do some big healing. I mean, that makes that 1 minute of really great breath change hours of your day.
Definitely. Now, if anybody wanted to reach out to you, learn more about your story in person, or just speak with you, find out about about your coaching or your services, how would they find you?
Well, if you Googled my name, Tanja Diamond with a J, Tanja Diamond, you'd find me on like 30 pages deep. So I'm kind of hard to miss.
Everywhere.
Yeah, I'm kind of everywhere. If you want a cool video, it's How to Kiss on YouTube. Tanja Diamond, How to Kiss. That's a fun video.
Very cool.
But yeah, so you can find me easily online, and I think you probably can drop a link for me that I can give you on here too, I would imagine.
What is the website?
Well, right now I'm reconstructing all my stuff. So can I just give you the link? You can find me on evolutioncoaches.com,
Okay.
but that's not my new stuff. And you can find me on Facebook, TANJA.
She's all over Facebook. I can vouch for that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I'd love to hear from you guys. Love to see what it is that I want you to know that it's hard enough being a parent, just a parent. It's hard enough just being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right. But and it's hard enough having a chronic issue.
Yes.
But if you load all 3 of those up, it can feel lonely, definitely isolating, hopeless. There's a lot of stuff it can feel like there. And so the other big thing is have support, and whether that's, don't bond on your trauma.
Right.
Don't bond about your trauma. Bond on your aspirations and passion.
You know, that is huge. I was actually going to ask you about support, if you had support when you were dealing with your, when your daughter was young, because I have found dealing with chronic illness, so having somebody who you can use as a sounding board when you're dealing with it is huge. And too many parents, and for everybody listening who might be in this situation, build a support system, even if it's simple as another family member, and I know Tanja said, don't bond on the issue, but having somebody else who's been through your stage of where you are, who understands what you're going through, and that can talk you down from the ledge.
Yeah, especially if they've come out the other side. But if you do get into a group where everybody's just complaining about what's happening, and that brings your nervous system down, not up.
Right.
Be with people that inspire you. Yeah.
By having people who can say, you know what, there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
That's right.
Been there, done that. You'll get through it. That's huge. And thank you for mentioning the support system. I was actually going to ask you about that. So Tanja, thank you again for being my guest. I am excited to have your story on the oxygen mask effect. It is very important for my listeners, for other parents going through similar things, to know there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And you are a perfect example of that. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Oxygen Mask Effect. I hope you had some takeaways that you will incorporate into your daily life. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a review, subscribe so you won't miss any additional episodes, and share the link with friends who might appreciate it. If the show resonated with you, please join me in the Oxygen Mask Effect community on Facebook at facebook.com/theoxygenmaskeffect. I look forward to speaking with you soon.